Well, CD, Joe Richards, just pleasing in having him request you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously come into this trade period having a couple of players that we think can play forward of the ball for us. So work with Collingwood to get that done.
In terms of Collingwood's interest in Dan Houston, is there a way to separate those things, or not really, that they become, he does indeed want to go to Collingwood, they become linked?
Well, I think most of the deals across the competition are linked in some way, so I'm sure that it will get linked throughout the trade period, whether that's Dan going to Collingwood or Dan going elsewhere. Most of the deals have some flow and effect, so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Welcome, Joe.
Well, I think for us, if he's able to get to us, it'll be another small forward who has some class that we think can add to a group that was very workmanlike in 2024, but we'd like to add some things in 2025.
Is Dan going to have to tell you where he wants to go, or is it a case of he'll work with you as a club to get the best deal for football?
Well, I think there's a balance in that would suggest that Dan's got to want to go somewhere that has the ability to actually satisfy us. So, I don't want to say it needs to be one or the other. There needs to be some commonality in all of it to allow everyone to get what they need out of any potential deal.
Does it seem like Collingwood is the most enticing option at this stage, and not stay on the trade period, but do they seem like the clubhouse leader if he wants to be traded?
I don't think there's any point talking about leaders right now. It's more about where the deal ultimately gets to. I've heard that Collingwood are confident maybe that they are the leader right now. I'm not sure that there's any point in me suggesting anyone's a leader until the actual deal happens. A lot can play out.
How would you open that CD then if say one club presents you a stronger offer which is better for Port Adelaide, do you then just have to say to Dan, we prefer you to go here? Is he happy to meet you halfway if that's the case?
Yeah, I think so. That ultimately is a question for Dan, but we've spent a fair bit of time trying to make sure that Dan's aware that the deal needs to be right for us before he's thinking about where ultimately he wants to go. And I think I've spoke to Dan at our best and fairest the other night. I think that he is understanding that if we're to let him go, that the deal's got to be right for us.
So has he indicated he'll go anywhere, or has he ruled out any options in Melbourne?
No, he hasn't ruled anyone out, and nor have we asked him to rule anyone out yet. I know you guys are desperate to work out where things are going to land on day one of the trade period, but my perspective is to wait until the end of it to see where it all lands, because what I have seen in the last 2 or 3 days is clubs who are getting more and more interested in Dan, and who are then ultimately more likely to be able to give us what we want.
I think it was 659 maybe when you did the deal for Xavier granted last year. Are you expecting this could go right down to the wire as well?
Well, I hope it doesn't have to, but ultimately the trade period doesn't end until the end of the trade period. So if you can get the deal done before the trade period ends, then that's a good outcome. But equally, I'm not desperate to push Dan out. The deal's got to be right for us.
While these negotiations are going on, having missed out on that free agency pair from the Giants, have you, in the last couple of days, seen if there's any other defensive options out there? Are you sort of hitting the phones to see if there is someone else to bring in if you do indeed lose Dan?
Sorry, I missed the start of that question.
In terms of you missed out on Cumming and Perryman, so if Houston is to leave in the next coming days, are you looking around at all for some more defensive options to possibly bring in, or is it what it is now?
No, I think it is what it is. Our priority throughout the entire back half of the year was to look at what we could bring in the front half. Dan's situation obviously necessitated us to have a look at what we could offer, but ultimately we were never going to get caught up in having to offer too much for the players, and that you've mentioned there, and ultimately that may have been the reason why we missed out on them in the end. So our priority here is, Jack Lukosius, Joe Richards, bringing them in, and if the right deal can be done for Dan to go, then we'll look at that. But ultimately we want to be better in 2025, and we think with Jack and Joe that we'll have the potential to be better. But I'm not itching to move Dan out.
Is there a circumstance in which he stays, Soldo?
Yeah, if we don't get what we want.
Do you think that's likely though, given you've got 3 clubs lining up?
I think it's a good position for us to be in, to have multiple clubs who want a player. I would imagine that that they'll work themselves up into some sort of fever pitch over the next week and a half. That means that they'll be willing to give us what we do want. But if they don't, Dan will stay. And that's not being anything other than practical about the situation.
What do you want?
Yeah.
We want something that's good. Again, I understand that the narrative here is to set expectations on things. I'm sure you would all appreciate that pick 2 or 3 is different to pick 12 and 13. And so, the way that we want to go about it is we'll wait and see, who's got the best deal on the table, and ultimately, if we're willing to do it, then the deal will get done. I'm sure, as we discussed at the start, that things will be linked, and ultimately, the clubs involved will all try and get what they want, and that's okay. I mean, we don't have to win every deal. I'd far rather leave the end of the trade period looking and saying that we achieved our outcomes, rather than getting too caught up in what we're going to get back for Dan, or what we're going to give up for Joe, or where Ivan wants to go, who you haven't mentioned yet. That's not us as a club. We'll wait till the end of the trade period and see what shakes out.
In terms of Jack Lukosius, the Suns indicated a future might likely be involved. Do you feel, given it might be aligned, that it could move pretty quickly?
Well, I mean, if we're to trade a future first round pick, firstly, we'd have to get some approval from the AFL to do that, and we haven't gone to them about that in a formal sense yet. Again, that's probably more for Craig and Gold Coast to have that. We've got an idea of what we think can get the deal done, but ultimately, until the deal gets done, I don't particularly want to volunteer anything right now.
Could a pick and player combo be on the cards for Dan Gillo?
Look, I'm not sure if you're talking specifically with regard to Joe, or...
No, just what you need for Houston.
No, I mean, we're well, again, I'd imagine that there is a chance that whatever deal happens for Dan gets tidied up with a whole heap of other players, but we're not going to the clubs who are interested in Dan right now and saying that you've got to give us a player back. We would have some interest in getting into the front end of this draft. We have less interest in future selections. That's for Dan and for Ivan. So, I think it's fair to say that right now our greatest priority in getting players out is actually to help our draft hand, rather than thinking that we need to get copious numbers of players in.
What is the state of play with Ivan?
He'd prefer to not be at Port Adelaide next year.
Do you expect that to get done pretty early? Are you pretty conciliatory with that?
Well, not particularly. I mean, like Ivan's season was unfortunately hampered, through injury. We didn't bring 2 rucks in last year to want to tip one of them out straight away, even though Jordan Sweet, looked in the second half of the year every bit an AFL ruckman. So, I mean, that's obviously a tick and gives us a little bit of flexibility around Ivan. But, again, the deal's going to have to be right for Ivan to go. We understand that. Well, I think the understanding around the place is that maybe St Kilda are the ones who are most interested in Ivan. Again, we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out.
Do you make it clear why he wants to leave?
Sorry?
Do you make it clear why he wants to leave?
Well, I just don't think he settled in Adelaide as maybe well as he would have liked. I'm sure that he also came to us with a view of being the number 1 ruck, and right now, I'm not sure that we would be willing to commit to that, so early. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't be if injury and form during the off-season ends that way, but I think in fairness to Ivan, he probably just hasn't quite settled in Adelaide the way that we would have liked.
You could beat Adelaide for Jack Lukosius' signature. Just your reaction when you told that news, and what does he add to your group?
I mean, I wasn't so fussed as beating Adelaide as I was making sure that Jack came into the club. So, for us, having Charlie Dixon go, who's been such a big part of our forward line for a long period of time, to have a guy who we think can play in a key position, forward line with Marshall and George and potentially Joe and Willie Rioli and Pep coming back next year, certainly gives us a couple more angles for us to attack with next year, which I think is going to be important, because that probably was the area of the ground that we were trying to piece together throughout the year.
Chris, just on one other matter, at Hawks Best and Fairest on Friday night, Jack Ginnivan said that he hopes that Hawks and Power play in round one so they can send Kenny off. Does it hurt you that they continue to pour fuel and fire on that matter, given the way that you guys were fine and it was fine?
No, not particularly.
Can I ask about Collingwood?
Sorry.
They reached out why
Last one.
you might not have found that to be the right move for you at the time?
Because I had a really good job at Port Adelaide, and quite happy to continue to try and help Port Adelaide achieve their goals.